Brian, good morning. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us.
Well, good morning, guys. Good to be with you. Thank you.
We'll get to Seattle here in a second, and they're interviewing people for their OC job and everything else. Anything in the run game in 2024, now into 2025, jump out to you in today's NFL?
It feels like, especially, I live in Philly, Brock, so I watch that team, really closely. But, the power running game is back. Like, power football is back, whether the quarterback's running it or whether the running back is running it. I feel like the return to that part of the run game is you can clearly look at these four teams standing and how all four teams love to run it.
So, Baldy, if John Schneider flew you out to Seattle and you were consulting him and Mike McDonald in this offensive coordinator search, and Mike said to you, hey, Baldy, what do you think, man? What is the best way? I'm hiring an OC. What is the family that you would feel most comfortable with? Would you feel comfortable with the whole Shanahan family? Is that run game and play action still the very best in the league? Are you liking some of these power concepts? Hank Fraley's in for a second interview and what they did in Detroit. If Brian Baldinger's consulting, what family of the run game and line of scrimmage do you prefer?
I think Klint Kubiak is a good coach. Things fell apart in Seattle, in New Orleans last year, all the way around. But, they started the season off as the hottest offense in football. Now, it fell apart pretty quickly. But I feel like Klint Kubiak and that Shanahan tree, Gary Kubiak, Klint, his son, I feel like that tree of, stretch runs, play action passes off it. I feel like you can add power to it. I think there's some flexibility in the run game there. But I feel like that's a good-looking symphony when it's working well together. So I feel like, that's, what they did in Seattle this year with Ryan Grubb. I mean, I tried to duplicate what he did at Washington. It didn't work. But I feel like Kubiak could be very successful in that up there in Seattle, especially with the receivers that they have and some of the linemen that they have, some of the athletic ability that Charles Cross and some of those guys have.
How far away is this offensive line? I mean, we talk about them a lot here, as you might imagine. How far away from being not just serviceable, but, a real asset is this offensive line?
I don't feel like they're very far away, especially if Big Abe can stay healthy. I feel like if Abe's on the field, I feel like they're better. It looked like they found some guards later as the year went on that they kind of fell in love with, but that might change. I feel like Ole is a good player at center. He might be a little undersized, but maybe in the right scheme he can be good because I know how smart he is. But I don't feel like they're that far away. I feel like, they're losing the two tight ends really hurt them in free agency last year, and I don't think they've really recovered because I thought both those guys were good blockers and good in their role, especially when they went three tight ends. So I think losing them hurt them. But I think overall, I mean, we've seen these teams build these offenses almost overnight with the right scheme and the right personnel.
That echoes very much, Baldy, something that Daniel Jeremiah said to us a couple weeks ago. I'm gonna fire this cut at you, and I think
let me hear what DJ said.
Yeah, you kind of answered it right there, but we asked him about fixing this O-line that's been a perennial issue for a long time here in Seattle. Here's what DJ had to say about that and the timing and how quickly you can turn things around.
To me, the tackles are fine. I think you can win with the tackles. To me, it's the interior three that needs to be addressed, and those aren't premium positions that don't require premium picks. You can attack that with day 2 picks and get massive upgrades. You can go into the free agent market and find an upgrade. Like I think that's 100% doable.
So you can fix it overnight. You can fix it with a second-round pick. I don't know, maybe that Becton dude out there in Philly
I feel like you're as good up front as your center. But I'm with DJ. Free agency and, you look at San Francisco and what they did in the draft last year. And, they went out, they drafted Dominic Pooney out of Kansas. I think he was a third-round pick. I believe Pooney started every game and played every snap for him this year. Mm-hmm. And he was a really good player from day one. So I'm with DJ. I mean, day 2 picks or day 3 picks sometimes and the right free agent mix, I feel like that could be addressed and fixed immediately.
That's a hard one, Pooney, especially because the Seahawks could have had him. I mean, he was drafted just a few spots after they took a different guard who barely played for them this year and, in fact, got passed by a guy who was a seventh rounder. So it sort of opens up some of these questions. I don't expect GMs to be perfect, and they're going to get stuff wrong. And that's just sort of the nature of the NFL business. But as you kind of look at where the Seahawks are at today and some of the big decisions they've made in the draft over the last few years, do you like the direction they went, which gives them Byron Murphy and really Devin Witherspoon, or the road not traveled, which could have included Jalen Carter, Mikey Sainrissil maybe to play the same spot as Spoon, and a second-round pick, Jared Verse, so they could have had instead of Murphy? How do you start to look at the last couple drafts for the Seahawks?
Well, I mean, if you could have had Jalen Carter, I mean, he's the best interior defensive lineman in this league, and he just keeps getting better, and he dominated the game on Sunday. And he plays the game with a veracity and an intensity, or just a level of violence that is rarely seen anymore. And then look, Big Cat had a great year, but I mean, there's no comparing. I mean, Byron Murphy is a good player, and I think he has a chance. Like, usually you got to give him a second or third year to see the development. But the talent of Jalen Carter was that we saw that coming out of Georgia. You can debate some off the field issues that might have dropped him, but we haven't seen talent like that come into this league, since Aaron Donald. So if you could go back and redraft and take Jalen Carter, you would go back and draft Jalen Carter.
Has there been any of the character issue? I know that was a concern, not only in Seattle, but with a number of teams. Has that been a challenge at all there in Philadelphia with him?
No, not at all. I mean, he's been a model citizen, and he looks like he loves the game of football, and he hasn't had any issues. And since Philadelphia does a good job of protecting their players, and if anything happened, it usually doesn't leak out. They got guys that do that. Without knowing anything more than that, Brock, he looks like, and I've gotten to know him a little bit. I know his agent pretty good down here in South Florida. It looks like it's all about ball right now for the kid.
And you know what? If he played in your era, Baldy, when he picked Stafford up the other day, he could have pile-drived him 6 feet deep into the ground, too.
He would have left an imprint in Lincoln Financial Field, or at least a big snow angel at that point.
Hank Fraley, how big of a deal is an O-line coach, and how unique is this guy and set apart maybe from some of his peers as O-line coaches in the league?
I think he's that wave. We saw Bill Callahan, what he did, across the league. Everywhere he went, the offensive line's improved. I feel like Hank is, on that path. I mean, he played a game. He played in Philly here. He was a free agent. He went to UCLA. He came to Detroit. I mean, I don't know all the other stops, probably a couple others. But that guy paid his dues, and he sees the game the right way. I remember when Hank and John Runyon anchored the Philadelphia offensive line. They were just, they were classic offensive linemen, just put a lampshade over their head, put them in the corner, turn the lights out, and they'll have a good time. I feel like you're hearing what Frank Ragnow has to say about him. He's one of them, and it all runs downhill. I'm sure it's running downhill right now in Detroit, losing this divisional playoff game at home. He knows how to take the criticism, yet keep it in-house. They had a backup right guard in there. They had a backup left guard in there at times this year. They didn't skip a beat. They're well molded. They're well coached up front. I mean, it helps to have the talent of Penei Sewell and Frank Ragnow, but there's something about that room that has to feel special, where you're just, you speak with one mind. You're united as a group, and I feel like Detroit's gotten that from Hank. And if he would go someplace else, he would take that same spirit with him.
Last thing, you see these quarterbacks that are, have just been tremendous throughout this postseason, and the guys that are moving on, and it's Mahomes, and it's Allen, and it's this Jaden Daniels that might be the best rookie quarterback we've ever seen, and it really starts to tell a story. If you are the Seahawks, how important is it that you look to be finding your quarterback of the future, or are you just reinvesting around Geno Smith to try to win a Super Bowl with him at the helm?
I like this. I mean, Geno threw for more yards than he's ever thrown before, and the numbers are big. They won 10 games in a rookie coach's first year without much of a running game because of injuries or a battered offensive line. I mean, it's going to be hard to improve upon 70% completion. You'd like the turnovers to be fewer, for sure. But I always think you got to be looking to the future. I mean, you just do. I mean, if there's somebody out there that, without going crazy in the first round, if there's somebody out there you can kind of groom and develop, and maybe you can find a guy, you got to do it. But, I mean, all these guys that you're looking at, Jaden's the second pick, Mahomes the 11th pick or 10th pick, the one guy, is Jalen Hurts. And they found him with the 53rd pick in the second round. I mean, if there's somebody out there, Riley Leonard, whoever, out there in the second or third round that you can bring on board, that you can begin that process and maybe they flourish, I think you got to take a look at it.
I love it. Baldy, thanks so much. Always love watching your break.